আপনারা দেখছেন টকিং পয়েন্ট।
সৌজন্যে মাহবুব এন্ড কো অ্যাকাউন্টেন্টস।
Welcome back. Before the break, we were talking to our distinguished guest today, Ruhi Hamid, a filmmaker, about her journey, how she graduated from Royal College of Art in design, and graphic design rather, and then she moved to something that was closer to her heart. She joined BBC, and then she has not looked back. Ruhi, you have recently been in Pakistan, and you were engaged in making a film there. What was that, Lahore Law? Or Lahore Law was an earlier film?
No, Lahore Law was actually almost 10 years ago. No, 14 years ago I made Lahore Law, 14 years ago. Lahore Law was a three-part series I made for Channel 4. And it was one of my first jobs that I did after leaving the BBC when I went freelance. And that was probably one of the most interesting time I've ever had.
Is this about the number of files waiting for the daylight?
Waiting to see the daylight. I actually followed 3 different cases over a period of 5 months. So one of them was a murder case. The second one was a zina case, and there was a case of adultery. And the third film was about divorce. And I had the privilege of following these cases through over the period of time. I mean, I was lucky that
Did you meet the actual persons involved in that?
Yes. So I filmed with, for instance, in the murder case, the person who was the defendant, who was supposed to have committed the murder. I met him, I got to know the lawyers, so I would film from everybody's perspective and from the judge's perspective as well. And I got amazing access to these courts. You know, it was never done before. And I think it's because my origins are in, India, Pakistan. They sort of welcomed me and they saw me as their own, and yet they gave me special treatment because they said that the kind of work you're doing is like a man's job, but you're a woman and you're doing this.
Let me interrupt you there. You mentioned something like, probably in Mali, you said they wanted a non-white person, or Zimbabwe.
Yes.
It's the same kind of theme that runs through our countries.
Yes. I mean, in a funny sort of way, it's an advantage to me that I'm not white and that I'm a woman, because I end up getting access to stories that I think men wouldn't get, and quite often, Europeans... You
can get to meet the women, see?
Yeah, I can get to the women, and also people don't see me as a threat. They don't feel that I'm as hostile, because they see me as one of them.
Yes.
And I'm quite lucky because I fit into all sorts of places. So if I go to the Indian subcontinent, I'm accepted there. When I go to Africa, I'm accepted there. If I go to South America, they think I'm South American. So I'm quite lucky, actually, having this color skin. It's an advantage rather than a disadvantage.
Yes, some people think that this is a disadvantage because look at the bleaching creams being sold in markets.
Exactly. Yes. No, I wouldn't change the color of my skin for anything. I think it's the most attractive color.
I remember something in India they have a bleaching cream or something very famous, you see, Fair and Lovely.
Oh, yes.
You see? I mean, think, fair and lovely, you see. If you're not fair,
then you're not lovely. I know. I mean, I think that says a lot about our attitudes towards women, don't you think? Especially in our countries. One is this idea that if you're light-skinned, you're more beautiful. But it's also this idea that women must fit into a certain kind of idea of what beauty is, of what woman is. Which I think is, an underlying problem with attitudes towards women.
Well, with the same kind of thing here it is like the figure, see, the weight.
Yes. Yes.
And people are going without food.
Yes, I know, it's ridiculous. Women are always under the spotlight in one form or another.
Yes. What about that film that you made, Knife Crime? See, that makes me feel that it's one of the most, probably it's the knife crime capital of the world, Cape Town.
Yes.
30 victims every night.
Yes. Unbelievable. This was the last film that I made, the most recent film that I made. And here we got access to emergency center in a hospital in a township in Cape Town. The township was called Kailicha. And the idea actually was that we were going to look at the work of the junior doctors there, what they're confronted with on a daily basis. And when we filmed over
You didn't have that you will come across knife crimes.
Well, we had an idea. We wanted to see how crime was being dealt with, and we thought the best way to look at it is actually from the prism of a hospital,
Right.
from these junior doctors' perspective, who are faced with people coming in every night over a
who do
weekend
long hours, you see.
with multiple stab wounds. I mean, some of the people who came in had 17 stab wounds in their back, in their head. It was quite horrific, actually. I mean, it was probably quite a difficult film to make for us.
Did you go into the causes of what causes this?
Well, what we did was we followed some of the characters who we met in the hospital who came in with stab wounds. We followed them home. And the thing that we found was that there is...
Is it drugs?
It's drinking, it's drugs, but also the underlying problem is unemployment, poverty, lack of development. And, you know, we went to South Africa.
Frustration.
Yes, huge frustrations. And, you know, young men who aren't working,
Right.
who are idle, and they start drinking or taking drugs, you know what's going to happen. Unfortunately, it's going to result in terrible violence. But, you know, it is the underlying problems, is lack of education, lack of development, high levels of unemployment. And it's very sad because these people were promised a better South Africa after apartheid.
Right.
And that's what we wanted to look at, is what is life like for young people in South Africa. And in this case, it was...
In so many years after
Yes,
independence.
20 years after independence, yeah.
Has it been screened?
Yes, it went out on the BBC earlier on this year. And I'm very pleased to say that it's been nominated for an award, a very prestigious award called the Rory Peck Awards.
And you are one of the finalists.
I'm one of the finalists. So
Great, great.
Yeah.
We hope you win the final.
Thank you.
There was another film that you made, and that was, when I read about it, see, I really know, I admire that you spent 3 days trekking. You know what I'm talking about.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Frontline Laos.
Yes.
What really made you go there?
Well, that was a big project by the BBC where they wanted to commemorate the 1 year's anniversary of the coalition forces going into Iraq. And what they wanted to do was show that even though there's a big war going on that we're involved in, there's actually lots of conflicts all over the world going on every day, and there are people caught up in conflict on a daily basis.
Right.
So the idea was that they sent 16 directors to 16 different conflicts around the world. I came across the story about the Hmong in Laos, and these are the group of people who fought alongside the Americans in the Vietnam War.
Right.
They were part of a covert CIA operation in Laos where they were disrupting the Viet Cong, basically.
Right.
And the Hmong were working alongside the Americans in that war in the jungles of Laos. And I went on a trek with Misha, my husband. For 3 days we had trekked through the mountainous jungle, which was the most difficult thing I've ever done. I mean, it was unbelievable, dangerous as well, because these people are
Any interesting incident, interesting quote unquote,
Yeah.
during those 3 days and nights?
Well, we were constantly threatened by being ambushed by the Lao soldiers. But when we arrived in the village itself, it was incredible. We were met by a village of about 200 men, women, and children. And they were standing, all of them standing there crying. And they actually thought that we had come to rescue them. They had been hiding in the jungles for 27 years, since the end of the Vietnam War. And they're being persecuted by the Lao army and the government. And for fear of their lives, they had fled into the jungles 27 years previous. And they'd been living there. Some of the children that we met had never known anything but the life in the jungle. And, you know, a lot of them were really badly wounded, shotgun wounds. Many of them die, and they live on the most basic diet, which we also had to live with. You know, for those days that we were in the jungle.
Like Survivor.
We were eating leaves that were boiled in a spinach-like way, and then cassava, which they make into a kind of a potato.
They have cassava there too.
It's a slightly more poisonous cassava, so they have to treat it and they have to boil it to take the poison out. But that's all they live on. They have a very, very basic diet.
And they had no touch at all with civilization.
No, none at all. They have some help from supporters who try and get supplies into them every now and then, and they've supplied them with radios so that they can keep track of what's going on. And they have got walkie-talkie radios that they try and communicate with people in the cities to try and get help every now and then.
And they did not object to you filming them?
Not at all. In fact, they were very grateful because what they asked us, they said that we want you to tell our story. We don't want to be a secret anymore because they're hidden. Nobody knows about them.
You had interpreters?
We had one interpreter with us who is a Hmong man who lives in America. He was one of the lucky ones who got out of Laos after the Vietnam War. He grew up in America.
I know it's probably not right for me to ask you, but did your film make any difference to their lives?
Well, I hope so, yes, because after the film was finished, we got invited by the United Nations in New York to go and present our film as a witness account.
Right.
And so it was given to the UN. We also went to Congress in Washington, and we presented it there as a witness account. And so there was a lot of help that was, well, there was initiatives to try and help the Hmong people. But, you know, it's a very difficult situation because it is a matter of relationships with Laos. America had recently opened up trade relations with Laos. Then Thailand and Laos have an agreement. So it's a very difficult situation. I mean, now I made that film in 2004. And since then,
10 years down the
10 years down the line, most of those people are now out of the jungle. They have been taken into rehabilitation camps in Laos. Some of them are in exile in Thailand. Some have ended up in America. So it's a very, you know...
Well, it was a significant work because, you know, that highlighted their plight.
Yes.
And world realized that. And as you said, that you went and explained things at the UN.
Yeah.
And help was provided. And so they are no more in seclusion. They're no more in hiding.
Yeah.
They're getting in touch with civilization.
Yes.
Probably their children will live a better life
hopefully, yes, hopefully. I mean, you know, I always endeavor to make my films powerful enough to bring about some kind of change. I went into filmmaking because I was interested in using film as a tool for change. You know, I want to do something that will help the developing world in particular because it's the world I come from. My origins are in Africa, in Asia, and I feel that I've had such a privileged life living in the West.
Right.
I've had a good education that I want to somehow help the people who are still living in those parts of the world who don't have the same privileges as I do, who don't have laws that protect them the way I do. And so I always hope that through my films I can get messages across to the wider world, to audiences living in Britain, in Europe, in America, and hope that, you know, when they watch my films, it'll make them do something about it.
That is the theme, that is the spirit, that, or probably that is the reward that you get out of your film, that you have done something
exactly
for the community,
yes.
for the people that were on the other side of the camera.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. You have made another film which is very significant for BBC Two. That was At the Epicenter, about tsunami.
Yes.
Probably we'll not have enough time before the break, so we'll talk about this after the break. But just briefly, that you spent about 5 months.
Yes, I went there 3 times over a period of 5 months. There were restrictions for journalists for how long they could stay in Aceh, in Banda Aceh, particularly because they had problems there with some rebels,
Yes.
the GAM rebels. They're a separatist group. And so the government was very strict about how long one could stay at one given time.
Well, Ruhi, we'll take a break here, and then we come back. We'll definitely go back to Banda Aceh
Okay.
and talk about tsunami. Okay, viewers, we'll have to take a commercial break here, and then when we come back, we'll talk to our distinguished guest today, Ruhi Hamid, a filmmaker, London-based filmmaker. Thank you.
আপনারা দেখছেন টকিং পয়েন্ট।
সৌজন্যে মাহবুব অ্যান্ড কো অ্যাকাউন্টেন্টস।